skies above North Vietnam erupt into the fiercest air combat of the war. Brutal supersonic dogfights. As kills mount, one U.S. pilot pursues a life-or-death quest for a coveted title. The first Air Force fighter ace of the Vietnam War. Using state-of-the-art computer animation, you're in the cockpit with America's finest pilots as F-4 Phantoms challenge communist MiG-21s. Experience the battle. Dissect the tactics. Relive the dogfights.
And at that time, I had no idea what Vietnam was, where it was, who it was.
Vietnam is a word connected to disaster for a whole generation of American civilians. It is often remembered as a failed war and a defeat for the United States and democracy. The United States intervention in Vietnam came at the height of the Cold War against the Soviet Union. The communist North Vietnamese government was increasingly becoming more aggressive to unify with the democratic South Vietnamese government under the communist leadership of Ho Chi Minh. The United States saw this as a threat to their interest in the region and to democracy, and began to, under President John F. Kennedy, send advisors to assist the South Vietnamese government. One day, under President Lyndon B. Johnson in the Gulf of Tonkin, North Vietnamese PT boats attacked American destroyers. President Johnson, using this event, convinced Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave the president a blank check to fight a war in the region. This one act of Congress would lead to a massive escalation of the war until the United States' defeat. Among this escalation was a massive air campaign beginning with Operation Rolling Thunder, a bombing campaign to cripple Vietnamese supply routes in the region. American pilots would find themselves in some of the most fiercest dogfights in aviation history over the skies of Vietnam. American planes such as the F-4 Phantom, the A-7 Corsair, and the F-105 Thunder Bomber would be put face-to-face with Soviet-made MiG-17s, MiG-19s, and MiG-21s. The United States would also have an expanded use of helicopters, such as the CH-47 Chinook, the AH-1 Cobra, and the UH-1 Iroquois, otherwise known as the Huey. My uncle, Regis Flaherty, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on September 3, 1944. He is the youngest of John and Velma Flaherty. His mother died in 1947. Starting at the age of 3, he began a life of foster and institutional care. Little did he know, but he would end up over the skies and jungles of North Vietnam. Did you enlist, or did you get drafted?
I enlisted before Vietnam. When I enlisted, they weren't. I enlisted in '63. We weren't really involved in Vietnam at the time when I enlisted. Matter of fact, I never heard of Vietnam until they told me we were going there.
Did you ever think about joining the military before you enlisted?
Yeah, my brother Bo Lakewell, he was in the Marines, and some of his friends were in the Marines, and some of the guys where I used to hang out at the park, they were in the Marines. They all talked about the Marines, so that's why I enlisted in the Marines. My brother Bo gets upset. We used to get upset when I say I enlisted because of him. He used to send me these letters with all their letters on their stationery that had the Marine Corps stuff, all that, and sort of got hooked on it then.
What was it like in the beginning during your service and training camp?
That was sort of, I won't say brutal, but it was certainly different than what you were used to. They were tough. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the movies or things about the Marine Corps helped, but that was pretty much on target with it was psychological warfare. They break you down to where they want, then they try to mold you into what they want psychologically.
Did you make any friends or remember any specific instructors?
Yes. I met there was one friend I was in boot camp with. We went through aviation school together. We went to our first assignment together, and we ended up in Vietnam together. And then we got out a couple years later after I was married. He called, and I went up. He lived up near Buffalo, New York, and I went up. He wanted me to be godfather for his son. So we still we send Christmas cards to each other still.
What part of the military did you serve in?
Aviation. We were in helicopter. I was in helicopters.
Did you like being in the helicopters, or did you always want to be in one when you're going through aviation school?
When I first wanted to be in the Marine Corps, a friend of mine's father, who I knew, he was an MP, and he talked me into becoming an MP. So when I was signing up for the Marine Corps, my brother, he told me, he says, "You don't want to be an MP." He says, "Nobody likes them." He says they're real bricks, to wear his word. And he said, "Go with aviation." He says it's a much better outfit. So that's what I did.
What types of activities did you do during training camp?
I will say they were difficult per se. I mean, you did a lot of physical training, a lot of learning. I think you go to classes and they teach you different things, basically about how to break down weapons, how to put them back together. You go to learn how to shoot, how to fight, that sort of thing.
What year did you get sent over to Vietnam?
Let's see. 63 I went in. I believe I went over there in September of 65. And I was there for 13 months.
Where in Vietnam were you stationed?
We were stationed at a little outpost called Marble Mountain. It was outside of Da Nang.
What was it like there?
Well, when we first got there, it was sort of like going to a resort. It was on the beach, nice and sunny. Basically, we really didn't have anything to do when we first got there. It was you were allowed to go into Da Nang. You were allowed to, do stuff like that. But then once we got attacked and hit one night, they invaded our base. And after all that settled down, we were never allowed off base again, except when we flew out on a mission.
What was the attack on your base like?
It was frightening. You really didn't know. It's like you see in the movies when they snuck in and they start throwing grenades, and they were mostly trying to blow up our helicopters, and they do too much to attack where we were at. But we did. When they attacked, and we had to all get out and get our weapons and go out and repel them. But
how much combat did you see throughout the war?
I won't say a lot. We would fly, in and out, and what we do is our group was a gunship outfit, and we used to, when there was wounded or what, and the medical helicopters had to go in, we used to support them. We used to, sort of protect them.
What was your role inside the helicopter?
When I was in a helicopter, I was a gunner.
What was that like?
It was exhilarating in one way and scary in another. You just never knew when you were going to get hit. You never knew when your gun jammed. You had to basically climb out onto the struts and unfree it. It was it could be exhilarating at times, but it could also be scary as hell.
What was your most memorable moment during the war?
My most memorable moment. I think it was probably the night we got attacked. It's when you're young and all that, you sort of have this I don't know what the word is off my head, this romantic vision of what war is like. And then once somebody shoots at you for real, you sort of grow up a hell of a lot. So I'd say that was that most memorable moment.
What did you enjoy the most while you were over in Vietnam?
What did I enjoy the most?
Yeah.
The people I was with. You form a camaraderie with these people, and it's you become almost like a second family, when you're over there. Because I guess everybody's dependent on everybody else, and you sort of get really close to people while you're there.
What part of the job did you enjoy the most?
Oh, that was tough because you enjoyed the flying. It also was scary. But if I had something to enjoy, it would be getting up in that helicopter and flying.
What was the least enjoyable part, on the other hand?
The heat over there, and the humidity, and it was just, you really couldn't sleep right. It was just, you just were always edgy because you're always sweaty and always tired and always, that was about the one I hated the worst.
Did you ever hear about any news about what was going on in the war besides around your unit?
No. The only outside information we ever got was letters from family, and they used to have this service newspaper used to come out, but all you got basically was what they wanted you to hear about what was going on here and what was going on here. But and when we were over there, it wasn't, the war really hadn't hadn't really exploded into what it was. It really didn't get bad over there per se until after I had left anyhow.
Did you ever get to meet any of the civilians in Vietnam?
No, not really. Like I said, I think I was in Da Nang twice, and I was with a bunch of our guys, so you never really got to mingle with the local populace.
What did you think about the protests at home while you guys were fighting in Vietnam?
We basically never heard of it until I came home. And at the time, I wasn't, I'm still not in favor of what they did. And I think, in a way, they cost us the war, but I don't know that we fought the war well enough to win it anyhow. Like I said, we didn't hear about it when I was over there, and when I come back, I just thought it was ridiculous,
Did you always support U.S. involvement in Vietnam?
At that point, yeah, until I was over there for a while.
What made you change your opinion?
It became more of a political war. I mean, I wasn't opposed to being there per se. I was opposed to how we were basically fighting over there. I mean, if you flew and you took fire and somebody was shooting at you, you basically had to call in and tell them somebody was shooting at you, and you have to tell them where it was coming from, and then they could tell you whether you could return the fire or not. And it was sort of crazy that way.
What type of tactics were used in Vietnam? Like, what type of warfare?
Well, for us, basically, we were protectors for the medevac helicopters. We would when they would go, guys would go into battle. Then we would follow, and we would make sure that, like you see in these movies where you get 100 helicopters are all landing and people are jumping out and all that, and then we would circle overhead, and hopefully everybody got in, the other ships got back out, and then if they were in and they were fighting, and then sometimes we would get called to go out and supply gunship support for them.
What did you think about the U.S. escalating the war, like invading Cambodia?
I don't know. I guess I was kind of young back then, and I never really cared one way or the other about it.
Looking back on it now, do you think the U.S. was prepared for its involvement in Vietnam?
Was I prepared, or we as a
Either.
I wasn't prepared to go to Vietnam, but I was prepared to do whatever the Marine Corps wanted me to do.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, at that time I never heard of Vietnam. I didn't know what it was until I got there. You know, as a matter of fact, when we landed in Vietnam, you know, they made one of these fantastic what's the word I'm looking for? Amphibious landings, and helicopters are coming over, and we're flying over, and all down on the beach are all these photographers and the people from the night. Everybody's looking. You know, it's amazing. And they got this giant amphibious landing coming, and all these helicopters. It was like there was a parade or something, you know. So I was sort of caught off guard when we got hit. You know, I just really didn't think it was much of being there was going to be anything. And then all of a sudden we got attacked. But so I wasn't prepared for what we ran into. I mean, I was prepared in the way that whatever I could handle myself, I could, you know, but I didn't know I never was been in a war or anything like that, so I really wasn't prepared for that. You're never prepared for that. I don't care what kind of training you got until you actually get into it.
Now do you think we as a nation were prepared for our involvement?
No. Not nationwide. I mean, the politicians maybe were, but I don't think the country was. It was a different era. I mean, back then people pretty much let the politicians do what they wanted until finally they wised up and realized they had to get involved in it.
How did the war change you as a person?
It grew me up, made me grow up. I don't look at everything as what, you know, I try to look beyond the reason for why people do things. You know, I don't just take people for, you know, somebody wants something done. I don't just do it just because I think they want it, because I try to figure out why they want it done. You know, I try to think for myself more than I used to.
As the war in Vietnam continued to drag on, the United States increasingly became more and more disinterested in continuing the conflict. Under President Richard Nixon, the United States and North Vietnam began to negotiate a peace in Paris. The United States conceded to ending bombing raids into North Vietnam. The talks broke down soon after, leading to President Nixon to issue an ultimatum to North Vietnam and launching Operation Linebacker II to bring the communist government back to negotiations. The Paris Peace Accords were signed on January 27, 1973, to end U.S. involvement in the war. On April 30, 1975, the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon fell, officially marking the end of the conflict in Vietnam.